Hello, my name is Philippe Girard, a professor in the history department at McNeese State University.
And I'm Kallie Johnston. I'm a graduating student from the history department at McNeese. Welcome to Your Grandma Rocks, where we explore the lives of famous women in history.
Welcome and bienvenue à nos amis francophones. Vous écoutez la radio de l'Université McNeese.
On the program today, music and history as we retrace the life of a remarkable woman.
She is possibly one of the most easily recognizable women in the world.
She was an actress, model, singer, bombshell, and love interest of the Kennedys.
Also, she was a troubled woman with a lot of pain deep inside.
We're talking about, of course, the blonde icon, Marilyn Monroe.
Along the way, we will sample some songs throughout the decades, including, of course, by Marilyn Monroe. Just to be clear, it is my co-host, Kallie, who researched the show, so she is also in charge of the song selection. So what is first on your list, Kallie?
Candle in the Wind by Elton John. That'll give us a preview of Marilyn's life ahead.
Goodbye, Norma Jean. No, I never knew you at all. You had the grace to hold yourself, but those around you crawled. They crawled out of the woodwork, and they whispered into your brain. They set you on the treadmill, and they made you change your name. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never knowing who to cling to when the rain set in. And I would have liked to know you, but I was just a kid. Your candle burned out long before your legend ever did. Loneliness was tough, the toughest road you ever played. Hollywood created superstar, and pain was the price you paid. Even when you died, oh, the press still hounded you. All the papers had to say was that Marilyn was found in the news. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never knowing who to cling to when the rain set in. And I would have liked to know you, but I was just a kid. Your candle burned out long before your legend ever did. Goodbye, Norma Jean. Though I never knew you at all, you had the grace to hold yourself while those around you crawled. Goodbye, Norma Jean. From a young man in the 22nd row who sees you as something more than sexual, more than just our Marilyn Monroe. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never knowing who to cling to when the rain set in. And I would have liked to know you, but I was just a kid. The candle burned out long before the legend ever did. Candle burned out long before the legend ever did.
Bonjour and welcome back to Your Grandma Rocks. We just listened to Candle in the Wind. Je m'appelle Philippe Girard.
And I'm Kallie Johnston. Today we're exploring the life of Marilyn Monroe.
Okay, let's get started. So, based on some of those shows that we have done in the past, not all the women whose lives we've explored had particularly good childhoods. So, could Marilyn Monroe be an exception?
Well, not quite. Marilyn, or Norma Jean Mortensen, was born on June 1st, 1926 in Los Angeles, California, to Gladys Pearl Baker and a father that she never knew. For some time, there was a debate about who her father actually was. And in 2022, DNA testing linked Marilyn to a coworker of Gladys's named Charles Stanley Gifford. The mom had an affair with him while being married to Martin Mortensen. Marilyn was always told her father was dead. Gladys was allegedly unprepared for motherhood, both mentally and financially. This realization eventually led to some inconsistency in Marilyn's childhood. She stayed with a foster family until Gladys bought a home in Hollywood for her and 7-year-old Marilyn.
All I know about the early life of Marilyn Monroe is based on the movie Blonde on Netflix. And based on that show, her mom was not exactly there, if you know what I mean, at least according to the movie.
She wasn't. In January of 1934, Gladys had a mental breakdown. She was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia and committed to a psychiatric hospital.
Two of us recently did a show on the artist Leonora Carrington, who was also institutionalized around that time. And from what you told me back then, mental health treatment has certainly evolved over time. But those living in institutions back in the 40s used to go through some pretty traumatizing treatments.
They were often cut off from their families, too. Gladys no longer had custody of Marilyn and struggled to keep in contact with her throughout the years. She outlived her daughter, however. But I'm getting ahead of the story there.
All right, so no father, no mother. That was an awfully lonely life for a young girl.
It certainly was. Luckily, Gladys's friend Grace Goddard took over for her and tried her best to take care of Marilyn. Her living situation continued to change. Marilyn claimed that she suffered from abuse and developed a stutter and a very shy personality due to her trauma. She lived at an orphanage for some time and was adopted by Grace in 1937. It was during her time with these foster families that she found comfort in films. She said, "I didn't like the world around me because it was kind of grim. When I heard that this was acting, I said, that's what I want to be. Some of my foster families used to send me to the movies to get me out of the house, and there I'd sit all day and wait into the night. Up in front, there with the screen so big, a little kid all alone, and I loved it."
Wow, there is that stereotype today of the kid being raised by the TV or the internet because the parents are always absent. Well, I guess this started earlier than TV or the internet. Marilyn was essentially raised by the movies. So tell me, did she ever get some stability in her life?
Yes, but not in a desirable way. She was attending high school while living with the Goddards, but they were unable to bring her with them when they moved. So Marilyn married her 21-year-old neighbor right after she turned 16.
Well, that sounds on brand for the 1940s, a marriage out of necessity when you're still a teenager. So next up in our story, Marilyn Monroe, 1940s housewife and homemaker, right?
And munition factory worker. After she dropped out of high school, she worked for the radio plane company. She did not enjoy the life of a housewife.
So now we're switching to Rosie the Riveter, right? The feminist icon of World War II factory workers.
There are some similar photos of Marilyn out there. A photographer took them to boost morale, but they weren't used, but it did inspire her to pursue a modeling career. In 1945, she signed a contract with a modeling agency, and they determined that she would do better as a pinup model than a high fashion model. And Marilyn developed her signature look here, platinum blonde hair styled in a straight updo.
So the iconic blonde of the 20th century was not a blonde. That reminds me of the French iconic blonde bombshell Brigitte Bardot because, well, she also was not a blonde.
Marilyn also got her stage name here. She reminded a studio executive of Marilyn Miller, who was a famous Broadway star who tragically died at age 37. Monroe was her mother's maiden name.
Well, I don't think it's very good luck to be named after an actress who died young because Marilyn also died tragically, right? Age 36. But I guess I'm foreshadowing here, so keep going with the story.
Although Marilyn enjoyed her new job as a model, her husband was not supportive.
A 1940s husband who is not supportive of his wife's career? Wow, that's a shocker.
No, definitely not. They divorced in 1946, and she began studying acting, singing, and dancing. She fell in love with acting, but as we mentioned before, she was definitely shy. Her acting teachers felt that she was too insecure and did not renew her contract in 1947. It was here that she began taking any jobs that she could that would help her gain some experience.
Well, in a way, that shyness became part of her trademark. I'm talking about that voice, that insecure little girl voices of hers. So in her case, it's not acting, it was really her. There was always a scared little girl inside of her. But also a determined girl. I mean, she didn't quit there when she faced problems, obviously.
She kept going. She signed to Columbia Pictures in 1948 and starred in the musical Ladies of the Chorus, but it was not successful and her contract was not renewed. She returned to modeling in commercials and calendars, even nude.
And I guess once people realized that she was comfortable with nudity, then people began associating her with that.
Yes, she definitely was typecast as a sexy bombshell. These films, like 1951's As Young as You Feel, often portrayed Marilyn as a silly, dumb blonde who often gets caught up in the main guy's troubles. In the 1952 film, Monkey Business, she was a child's secretary who was unaware of how her beauty caused chaos around her.
But these films, they did great, and that's how she became popular. In a way, she reminds me of Carmen Miranda, another star of the 1940s. She was from Brazil, because she was also typecast as a bombshell, in her case more the Latina bombshell, not the blonde bombshell. And Carmen Miranda, she also complained of being typecast. But then she was a star. She was the highest paid actress in Hollywood for her time, so I guess it is still better than working in the salt mines.
Things began looking up for Marilyn, and in 1952, she and Joe DiMaggio, a retired Yankees baseball player, began a public relationship.
All right, I know diddly squat about baseball, but even I have heard of the Yankee Clipper. That tells you how famous he is. Actress and athlete. That seems like an unlikely combination. I guess Tom Brady and Gisele Bündchen, they made it work for a while.
Marilyn and Joe got along, but soon after they were dating, a scandal arose. She admitted to doing a nude calendar photo shoot because she desperately needed money. She gained sympathy for being honest at least, and she made the cover of Life magazine with the caption, Marilyn Monroe, the Talk of Hollywood. 3 new films were released soon after the scandal.
There's no such thing as bad publicity.
Marilyn began to hone in on her acting skills, taking classes, studying, and really getting into her characters. She also began to lean into her status as a sex symbol, but people began to complain about her. She was often late to filming, needed several takes to get a scene done, was dependent on acting coaches, and struggled to remember her lines.
Well, you know, one of my favorite movies, it's Some Like It Hot, where she starred with Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis. It's a really great comedy. And I remember watching an interview of the director of that movie, Billy Wilder, and he said exactly what you just said, how Marilyn Monroe could not remember her lines. And there's a specific scene in the movie where she's supposed to look for something in her hotel room. It's a very simple scene, but after something like 20 takes, she still got the lines wrong. So the director simply hid little notes wherever she was to look for stuff in the scene. So when she opened one drawer in the hotel room, there was a note there telling her what her line was and where to look next. And then she would open another drawer. Kind of like a scavenger hunt. All that was not very professional, but Billy Wilder was surprisingly cool about this in an interview. He said that another actress, she would have shown up on time, on set, and she would have known her lines. But that other actress would not have been Marilyn Monroe. And to him, that was the price to pay to get a great performance from one of the great actresses of his time.
Unfortunately, her insecurity developed into stage fright and terrible anxiety. It was here that she began abusing medication and alcohol in an attempt to help her with her anxiety and insomnia. But 1953 brought major success. One of her most famous movies, Niagara, had Marilyn playing a stunning red-lipped seductress with the goal of murdering her husband. Of course, critics focused on her beauty and not on her acting skills. In the musical comedy Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, Marilyn performed the song Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend.
Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. That's an iconic song. We gotta play it.
This is definitely an anthem for Material Girls. Let's listen to it now.
The French are glad to die for love. They delight in fighting duels. But I prefer a man who lives and gives expensive jewels. A kiss on the hand may be quite continental, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. A kiss may be grand, but it won't pay the rental on your humble flat, or help you at the automat. Men grow cold as girls grow old, and we all lose our charms in the end. But square cut or pear shape, these rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. Tiffany's, Cartier, Black Star, Ross Gorham. Talk to me, Harry Winston, tell me all about it. come a time when a lass needs a lawyer, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. There may come a time when a hard-boiled employer thinks you're awful nice, but get that ice or else no dice. He's your guy when stocks are high, but beware when they start to descend. It's then that those louses go back to their spouses. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. I've heard of affairs that are strictly platonic, but diamonds are a girl's best friend. And I think affairs that you must keep Masonic are better bets. If little pets get big baguettes, time rolls on, and youth is gone, and you can't straighten up when you bend. But stiff back or stiff knees, you stand straight as Tiffany's.
Welcome back. I'm Kallie Johnston, co-host of Your Grandma Rocks, your favorite women's history show on KBYS.
Et je suis Philippe Girard. Vous écoutez la radio de l'Université McNeese.
Today we're exploring the life of Marilyn Monroe. We just discussed her childhood and rocky rise to fame.
She went from lonely orphan to bombshell pinup to struggling actress to major star in 1953 by portraying ditzy and seductive characters.
In December of 1953, Marilyn's nude photos made an appearance in the centerfold of the first ever Playboy issue, as well as her picture on the cover, all without her consent.
I do remember watching a series on Hugh Hefner's life. That one was on Amazon. I think the title was American Playboy. And one episode of that series dealt with the first Playboy issue and how Hugh Hefner learned that Marilyn Monroe had done some nudie shots in the past when she was a young actress. And Hugh Hefner found out who had the rights to one of the series of nudies, and voila, he used it without the consent of Marilyn Monroe in Playboy, and the magazine was off to a great start.
Well, she definitely wasn't happy about that. In fact, she did not make any money off of this. Fun fact, Marilyn Monroe and Hugh Hefner never met until he died in 2017 and was buried in the crypt right on the side of Marilyn. Apparently, they never met in real life. Instead, Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio got married in January of 1954, but something threw a wrench in that pretty early on. In 1954, she starred in The 7-Year Itch, and in one scene, she and her love interest walk over a subway grate and air blows up her dress, revealing her legs for all to see.
One of the most iconic moments in all of movie history. Well, the press, the PR department, they all ate it up. So as I recall, Joe DiMaggio was not pleased.
No, he had enough of her public persona. He was furious, jealous, and physically abusive. They soon filed for divorce.
That's an interesting period, right on the cusp of the 1960s. Marilyn Monroe, she was already anticipating the sexual revolution of the 60s and the feminist liberation, and her husband clearly abided by a more traditional image of womanhood. In defense of Joe DiMaggio, he did one of the most romantic things I ever heard of. Despite the divorce, he still kept a soft spot for Marilyn. And after her death, he paid a florist to deliver roses to her grave 3 times a week for the next 20 years.
That's really sweet, but again, you're jumping ahead here. Let's get back to her career. She took matters into her own hands, tired of being typecast, and founded her own production company called Marilyn Monroe Productions. She began dating a playwright named Arthur Miller.
Ah, yes, that is the Arthur Miller, the famous author of Death of a Salesman or The Crucible. That's an interesting match here. I mean, he was a writer, an intellectual, and she was seen as just another dumb blonde. So based on their public persona, I would not have put them together.
She also faced backlash after their marriage in 1956 due to his left-leaning ideology.
In 1956, that would be right after the McCarthy era, so I could see the problem. The Hollywood blacklist, that was not so far back.
They had a Jewish ceremony and she converted to Judaism, which was also a shock for the media. Her first film under her own production company, 1956's Bus Stop, was a success, but Marilyn's barbiturate abuse had escalated during this time. She was suffering with more personal matters, including an ectopic pregnancy and a miscarriage that was likely linked to her endometriosis. She suffered multiple miscarriages prior to this.
I can't imagine that this would be easy to ignore when filming, especially since she really wanted to be a mother.
Marilyn was also becoming increasingly annoyed with her typecasting, so she would deliberately ruin scenes, demand retakes, and forget her lines. But at the end of the day, they enjoyed her performances because of her sex symbol status. She remained busy with a total of 29 films within 14 years.
So what about her personal married life? What about husband number 3?
Not so great. Arthur Miller and Marilyn got divorced in 1961. He stated, "She was a super sensitive instrument, and that's exciting to be around until it starts to self-destruct."
Ouch. Well, I guess the media was right. They might not have been the best combination.
Arthur wrote her last film, The Misfits, that tells the story of a recently divorced dramatic woman who befriends 3 cowboys.
How did he do?
Well, it was a flop, for multiple reasons. Poor character development, but also Marilyn's declining health. She was struggling with gallstones and an even more severe barbiturate addiction that certainly affected her performance. She had done a surgery for her endometriosis and was hospitalized for depression, and also had a severe sinus infection.
Well, she reminds me of JFK. On screen, the very picture of youth and health. Behind the scenes, not so much.
Well, we need to talk about JFK, obviously. 1962 was her big return. Another very iconic moment happened. On May 19th, Marilyn, dressed in a skin-tight dress covered in rhinestones, which gave the appearance that she was nude, sang a very breathy "Happy Birthday, Mr. President" to JFK in New York at a birthday fundraiser.
Why did they pick her to sing the song in the first place?
Well, Jackie Kennedy claimed that it was Bobby Kennedy who planned the whole thing. A lot of people claim that the president and Marilyn had an affair, although they never actually confirmed this.
Well, that's a classic moment, so we need to listen to a little clip of it.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mr. President. Happy birthday to you.
All right, based on that song, I'm pretty sure that there was definitely something going on between JFK and Marilyn Monroe. That is a very sexy happy birthday. As I recall, rumors also placed her in the bed also of the brother of JFK, right? Robert Kennedy?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised due to their histories of unfaithfulness.
So whatever happened to the dress, do you know?
The dress cost $12,000 in 1962, but in 2016, it was the world's most expensive dress when Ripley's Believe It or Not bought it for roughly $5 million. Kim Kardashian came under fire for wearing that dress at the 2022 Met Gala, where just as it needed to be sewn into Marilyn, it also had to be sewn onto Kim. It is reported that crystals are missing from the fabric and it's stretched and buckled.
You heard it first on KBYS. Kim Kardashian's derriere apparently is bigger than Marilyn. The dress was stretched and buckled. Well, anyway, that story reminds me of another famous dress, Jackie Kennedy's pink Chanel outfit, the one she wore on the day of her husband's assassination. Or another infamous dress, the one that Monica Lewinsky wore when she and Bill Clinton definitely maybe didn't have sex, ? Anyway, let's leave those dresses aside. It's time for a musical break.
Many other celebrities, like Madonna, take a lot of inspiration from Marilyn Monroe. Let's listen to Material Girl. And P.S., this music video was directly inspired by Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend.
Some boys play
And welcome back to Your Grammar Rocks on KBYS. Je suis Philippe Girard.
And I'm Kallie. Today we're covering the life of movie icon Marilyn Monroe.
We just discussed a little bit of her downfall due to drugs, as well as her relationship with JFK and RFK.
Let's get into something that has been the subject of many conspiracies throughout the years, her death.
We have been hinting at it all along, so set the scene for us.
On August 5th, 1962, in the early morning hours, Marilyn's housekeeper, Eunice Murray, found a bedroom light on and the door locked. She called Marilyn's psychiatrist and he broke into her bedroom through the window. Marilyn's physician pronounced her dead. They called the Los Angeles Police Department at 4:25 a.m.
Why did they wait so long to call the police? I mean, nowadays 911, that would be the first number that you dial when you encounter something like this.
Maybe they didn't want to alert the press and only wanted people who knew Marilyn to be there before they figured out what happened.
So, what happened to her?
So she had been dead since the night before, with barbiturate levels several times the lethal limit in her system. There were pill bottles all over her nightstand. Based on her history of depression and mood changes, her death was ruled a suicide.
Well, that would seem plausible based on her history. But then when JFK died a year later, people didn't like the official plausible story either. So tell us, what about the alternate versions out there?
The conspiracy theories often involve the Kennedy brothers and that the CIA killed her because they were worried that the Kennedys shared too many confidential secrets with her. This theory was retracted by the man who came up with it in 1973, but maybe the CIA made him retract his theory.
I'm not a big fan of conspiracy theories. I need facts.
None of these conspiracies have ever been proven by any facts, including the one that the mafia accepted the contract to kill Marilyn. There's another rumor that the Kennedys ordered her death because they thought she was a communist.
Okay, so at first they were her lovers, and now they're the killers. Anyway, let's talk about the last thing on our list, her legacy. I mean, there's a reason that we're still talking about her today on the show.
Marilyn is an amazing example of determination and persistence. Despite her unstable childhood, she was able to become successful in her own right.
So it's a rags to riches story, the perfect embodiment of the American dream. I get it. She's just as American as apple pie.
And even though she played dumb blondes, she certainly wasn't one. She was a brilliant businesswoman who knew exactly how to market herself. She once said, while acting, "I can be smart when it's important, but most men don't like it."
Well, over the years, companies also try to portray actresses as the next one, the Marilyn Monroe type, but no one could ever come close to her level of stardom. She was really one of a kind.
She did, however, influence a wide variety of people: feminist writers, scholars, actresses, actors, and fans of vintage cinema.
Including myself. We will be continually discussing and reflecting on her life well into the future, I'm sure. But not today. We are out of time.
What a life. We're glad we could share it with you. This program was funded by a Juliet Hartner grant for women in the humanities.
And that program was also sponsored by the History Department at McNeese.